Hmm. And particularly a lot of times for men, because men, particularly men of color, urban, men who live in an urban environment, we were only taught two acceptable emotional states growing up. So we were taught, we were taught we're allowed to be happy and we're allowed to be angry. you know so so sometimes we don't necessarily have the emotional intelligence to process through what these other feelings might be: grief, sadness, loss, um you know depression. We don't necessarily know what those are, so they may manifest themselves a lot of times as, all of our negative emotions get manifested as anger. So that's not an unusual, that sometimes is not an unusual occurrence, and it's okay. It is, it's okay, um that that we experience that. So I would, I would just say to, say to folks that whatever you're kind of having to go through to cope right now is okay. And we've had conversations about your situation with your mom. you know um the fact that you did lose someone who was very publicly known and publicly beloved, um and so, and also a woman of faith, and and people are coming with the typical Christian stuff, and people are trying to put their own grief on you, and you had every right to sort of step back and say, what, I understand you, that you were in love with the public person, but that was my mom,
Mhm.
and I needed to to get and do what I needed to do for me, because this was my mother, and that's perfectly okay. I don't think there's anybody who can, who can fault you for feeling I needed to separate my private grief from other people's public grief.
Mm.
Um, and so that's a perfectly acceptable. Um, but it's also, some people are better grievers. They might experience more publicly.
Mhm.
The problem is that we don't have the outlet to do that. There is no funeral right now. There is no um there is no public memorial. um there is no opportunity for us to come together and hug and cry and laugh, or at the repast afterwards where we tell all the stories. you know that um those things are cut off from us right now. And then, like I said, you have, um this isn't even this isn't, anytime you're dealing with the long term, what's a pandemic like this, you know um where it's not like a mass casualty event where everybody's dying at once. 9/11, we lost a lot of people. We lost a lot of people in one day, one of the largest loss of life in one day this country had ever experienced. But it was in one day. This is not happening like this. This is, okay, it might be three people today in my life, it might be four people tomorrow, it might be a mess of people next week, it might be. And so I'm just sort of stuck in these stages with each individual one. Or maybe some people are just getting overwhelmed. I think, um for me personally, the shock of the first couple of people that I knew, um it almost started to wear off after a little bit. Like, the first couple of people, it was devastating. Then the next couple of people, it was, and I don't know if that's my mind protecting me, and this will come out, later, um, or I don't know if it's, um, if it is just the way that right now, because I'm not as shocked because it's just so many people, you know. Um, so I think if we actually were having funerals for everybody right now in the way that we would normally have funerals,
23,000 people.
yeah, I think, not only would we be spreading this thing farther and wider, but let's just say we could do this without it, the risk of it spreading to anyone else. It would probably be overwhelming for most people, to just, you could go to a funeral a day for a couple of weeks. And that would be a lot for people, so, again, the spiritual part of me, the pastor in me, um, is somewhat, in a way, I don't want to say I'm glad for what's happening right now. I don't want any of this to happen anyway, but it's almost like the process in which it's happening. There is sort of somewhat of a protective mindset while it's happening, and that may be what people need right now. It might, in the normal scheme of things, might be very unhealthy. But for right now, when you're dealing with the sheer number, I, if I were a doctor or a nurse right now, I think I would probably not be trying to count the ones that I've lost, and trying more and more focused on the ones that we can save, you know, um, because it's so much going on, and it's days and weeks of dealing with what, normally when you have a mass casualty situation, it's all one day, it's spread, the treatment may take a couple of days, but within a couple of, within a week, usually all the work slowed down, and we can kind of sort of start get back to normal. That's not happening right now. If anything, things keep increasing. And so folks really are overwhelmed or overworked, so, um, I would imagine that if I were in that situation, that I would be focused on counting the ones that we could save, just to protect myself, you know, um, and that's that continues to be a challenge, for folks. So, um, just this is, but I think again it comes back to self-care for now. We can always talk about, you know, treatment later, but right now, one, there's not that much access to it now, and two, as long as we're in the midst of what's going on, it's going to be really hard to effectively treat that trauma and that grief.
So, just to recap, the feelings that we are experiencing are normal.
Yes,
The
very much so.
sadness, the sorrow, particularly if you're a person who has a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
Sadness, the sorrow, the sickness that you may be feeling, physically ill from what's going
Mm-hmm.
on, the anger, crying, continuous thoughts, not being able to sleep. Those behaviors and those feelings are normal. I do believe that for those people who are at home, who are able to work from home, or who are just home because they are no longer employed, I think it's important, and you talked about this, but this is the self-care. I think it's important that you muster up some strength to engage in activities that maybe you always wanted to do and just didn't have the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this is a very distressing time that we're in, I am a extremely optimistic person, and I'm a woman of faith. So I try to see the benefit. I don't know if I want to say good, but the benefit of various situations, even if they are causing us emotional harm or injury, trauma. And so for me, I feel that this is a time for all of us who are home who are able to be home regardless of your situation, to love on your families if you live with them.
Mm-hmm.
We are so busy in our lives. We are busy at work. We are busy with our hobbies. We are busy with our volunteer. We are busy with churches. We are just busy people, working, traveling, just busy. This is a time where we have been, as the slang says, have a seat. we're, we're having a seat right now. And it's important that we look at the positivity in that. Love on your family, love on your children, love on your spouses, find new hobbies, find a recipe, learn to cook. There's so many free classes online that
Yeah.
we can take. Start your vision board. Start a project that you've been pushing off to the side. Finish a project that you've been pushing off to the side. Open a book, read a book. Some people are busy, they have books, they don't read them. Now is the time to read a book. It's just a time for us to have a seat, to calm down, to calm our lives while we're going through this distressing time, and find the benefit of this. Because once we get out of this, we don't know what that will look like. We don't know if our lives will be busier than before, or if they won't be. So as a woman of faith, I say hallelujah anyhow. That's a song that my family sings, meaning I am going to see the benefit of this experience, even though it's causing me deep trauma, deep emotional injury. And it's important to know that, once again, you are not alone. If you don't know what to do with these feelings, pick up the phone, call a family member, call a friend, call a mentor, call a pastor if you go to church, if you believe in church. Call someone so that you can get those feelings out, so that you don't have to sit with them and it cause more harm to you.
And and interestingly enough, and I'm gonna close with this, but I think a lot of folks don't realize they think they think that they're, when they do reach out to someone, that they're being a burden. For a lot of people,
Chris.
Yeah, you just froze for a minute. Okay. But for, a lot of people think that they're being a burden when that happens. But the reality is, sometimes it's helpful for me to help somebody else to get me outside of myself. That, I might be going through a lot, but helping you helps me, if it does nothing else, but it helps me kind of put my stuff to the side for a minute, and and put some things in perspective in helping you. So a lot of people think that they're going to be a burden in reaching out to someone because they're struggling. No, that person may need to hear, they may also need to hear that they're not by themselves. They may also need to hear that somebody else is going through this with them, and and it can create a connection that can be very valuable in helping each other process. So it's a two-way street. I mean, so that I think it's really good to have some accountability partners through this, some people that they can share with you and you can share with them.
Chris, once again, I want to thank you for this important discussion today on grief, following up our discussion last week on trauma. Thank you for watching. Again, this is the Caregiver Society's series on coping with COVID-19. Last week we spoke about trauma. Today we talked about grief, and we will follow with more episodes dealing with the emotions and the reactions that we are experiencing. So until next time, be blessed, stay safe, take the safety precautions that we're told to do, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.